Hey everyone, so One Piece chapter 1036 just came out, and this was a pretty solid setup chapter. So to begin with, we picked up right where we left off with Zoro defeating King, and as a lot of people wanted, we got a little bit more out of King as a character. We got a bit more of a, insight into his and Kaido's relationship, because that was looking to be pretty interesting. What I liked a lot, that everybody's going to be talking about, of course, is the parallel that we got between Luffy and Zoro and Kaido and King. I really like the fact that Kaido, it seems similar to Doflamingo, does have a bit more of a special connection with the higher-ups in his crew, right? Doflamingo, of course, we saw he didn't hesitate at all to, just off any of his random lower-tier henchmen, but the further up you went up in his hierarchy, it seemed like the closer and closer he got to them, and it really seemed like a lot of them truly believed in Doflamingo's aspirations as a pirate. I remember Monet, for example, right before she died, she said that you are going to be the man who becomes the Pirate King. Shades of King basically saying that he believes that Kaido is going to be Joy Boy. Obviously, King and Kaido, they're operating on a bit of a higher playing field than Doflamingo and his crew, so they're not just talking about Pirate King, they're talking about greater ramifications for, the entire future fate of the world, right? So they're talking about Joy Boy. It does beg the question of how much King knows about, how much is he, as a member of the Lunarian race, I guess, privy to the information about, the Void Century, the Will of D, etc., right? Is this story of Joy Boy something that Kaido shared with him? We know that Kaido already believed that he was going to be the man who would change the world right when he met King initially and freed him. So King, did he only learn of Joy Boy after Kaido explained it to him, or did King and do all Lunarians know about Joy Boy and, the Void Century, etc.? So a lot of lore questions being brought up here. I think Kaido's flashback, again, is set to be the most interesting flashback we've ever had in the series, even more than Oden's flashback. And I think just, the idea that Kaido knows more about the true history than probably any other living character in the world right now, very possibly. Maybe that's a bit too bold of a statement, but possibly more about the true history than any living character at the moment. That's definitely a possibility. I talked about this in my video about, Kaido learning the true history before Roger. You can click on that link in the, top right above my head. But I guess besides Yamato, who has the logbook of Oden, it's very likely that Kaido does have, full knowledge of the history of the world. So whenever we get Kaido's flashback, I think that will likely obviously be in the next, starting in the next 6, 7 maybe chapters or so. If we get it during his, a pause in his battle with Luffy, I think that's set to be one of the most interesting sections of the story that we've ever had. So definitely looking forward to Kaido's flashback. Oda just keeps teasing it. And obviously the ending of, Zoro versus King, with the nice parallel of King, resolving to his life, his loyalty to Kaido, and he's not going to lose again till Kaido becomes, till Kaido goes all the way, same with, Zoro and his oath to Luffy. I like that parallel. And I like the fact that Zoro, comes out of this battle with, a new moniker for himself. Again, I put out a video very recently on the Straw Hat epithets coming out of Wano. So, King of Hell, I think that has a nice ring to it. I think that, it's a bit out of the blue, in my opinion, but I see where it's coming from, and it does fit Zoro's persona pretty well. And on top of that, I think that, that nicely, it inserts King into his title, which is fitting, as this arc did bring out his kingly spirit, his conqueror's haki, right? That was the main focus. And then on top of that, it separates him a little bit from, let's say, his ancestor Raima, who is known as the God of the Blade, while Zoro is the King of Hell. I think that's a nice little parallel. We don't know yet if that's going to be Zoro's new nickname or something like that, but I like that that's, it sounds like Zoro kind of just announced it. So let's see where that goes. So beyond that, I like that this chapter kind of gave us a rundown of everything left to expect from the rest of Wano before we get to Luffy versus Kaido, right? So, 5 major things. 1, Momonosuke's situation, stopping Onigashima. We know that that's going to happen. 2, Yamato stopping the yokai, right? These 2 things are necessary to stop, total disaster. 3, Hiyori and Orochi. I would love to see Denjiro get in there. And then 4, Raizo and Fukurokuju. And then 5, Kid and Law. So, those are pretty much the 5 things. That's pretty much it. We've got Kid and Law as the only people left on the Supernova side, and then 4 remaining, Wano-centric characters' storylines. Once those five plot points are ticked off, we should basically be set up for Luffy versus Kaido. Now, I do think that, X-Drake's battle with CP0, it does appear to be over. Again, I put out that video on Awakened Zone, so I think it's interesting to me that only X-Drake was defeated here, considering he might be in Awakened Zone, in which case he might be like showing him defeated and him getting back up. That would be pretty interesting, whereas you can't really do the same thing with Apu because he's not a zone user, so I think that's an interesting possibility as to why X-Drake was shown defeated here and Apu was not, and he seems to get away. Now, might go nowhere. I don't really know what the whole reasoning behind this whole X-Drake Apu team up, don't team up sort of back and forth was. I guess we'll find out soon enough, but I don't know if that's one of the major sort of plot points that really is going to be getting like a full chapter of focus or something like that over the course of the rest of Wano. I'm sure we'll get a bit of a tie-up to that, but I don't think it's, what I'm saying is I don't think it's one of the 5 major plot points as I talked about. Even Raizo versus Fukurokuju, that's not really a major plot point, but I would expect it to be tied up in, you know, half a chapter or a quarter of a chapter or something like that. Now, and also, by the way, why people were wondering why that one hasn't been, you know, finished up yet, whereas all these other major Straw Hat fights are happening. The way I see it, it seems to make more sense that Oda's trying to save, he tried to get all the Straw Hat stuff out of the way first, then he's saving the, Scabbard-related, sorry, not Scabbard-related stuff, but, you know, Wano Citizen-related stuff. So, you know, the Yamato, Hiyori, Momonosuke, the Scabbards, we got Kinemon and Kiku's storylines being somewhat seemingly, you know, I don't know about wrapped up. I don't know exactly what Oda's plan is with these characters, but he's addressing all of these Wano-related character storylines now, after the Straw Hat stuff, as well as the Supernovas. So that's why we're getting X-Drake, Apu, Law, and Kid after the Straw Hat. So that's why Oda kind of did it in this order. That's why Raizo versus Fukurokuju is just this weird fight that was oddly pushed towards the end, but it makes sense if you look at the way that Oda's kind of, the order he's kind of like separating things to play out, right? Last thing I'll also add is that I think it would be nice if Brook is able to help Yamato in some way with the yokai. They both have ice-based abilities, the yokai's fire, etc., etc. Brook has not gotten anything to do so far. So, all that being said, I think my best guess would be, let's say, of those 5 things, Yamato yokai, Hiyori Orochi / Hiyori Denji Orochi, Momonosuke, Raizo Fukurokuju, and Kid and Law. All of those things together, my guess is that those it'll be about a grand total of 5 chapters, because I think that, you know, maybe we get a bit more filler between, and maybe some of those things can happen both in one chapter. Again, Raizo versus Fukurokuju, I don't imagine is a full chapter. Again, Yamato versus Yokai as well, I don't think is a full chapter. So the way things are looking, you know, chapter 37, 1037, 38, 39, and 40, I would not be surprised if, like, we're at Luffy versus Kaido by chapter like 1040, 1041-ish, because those 5 things I listed, they can each, I think Kid and Law is maybe the only one that requires a full dedicated chapter to it. And Oda has been doing these, you know, finishing fights in a single chapter, so I would expect 1 chapter for Kid and Law versus Big Mom. Whether or not Big Mom is completely down, you know, whatever, permanently, I personally would doubt that, but I do think that we are going to get a chapter of Kid and Law, at least temporarily, taking out Big Mom. The only thing, I think, I think there's not much else. I think Oda, I would not be surprised if Oda wanted to get to Luffy versus Kaido by chapter 1040, 1041. So we're probably going to continue getting like little quick cuts to that. I think that the quick cut we got to that this chapter, I mean, I can't say I personally didn't like that, you know. Again, if this is set up for Luffy to be defeated, which, as you all know, I think it is, so that's why we get Luffy so, you know, laughing, casual, confident, etc. right here. To me, that's a setup for Luffy to be defeated. I think that's the reason it's so drastically different from the tone of Luffy's fights, you know. If you go to Luffy versus Lucci, or Luffy versus Doflamingo, or like Luffy versus Katakuri, or Luffy versus Crocodile, right? The reason we're getting such a lighthearted, I guess, happy-go-lucky, carefree, confident Luffy here, in my mind, is because it's set up for Luffy to be defeated and for him to not defeat Kaido here. But if this is really the final round of Luffy versus Kaido, then I personally don't really care for this, you know, at this stage of things, like this happy sort of banter, because for me, that's for me lacking compared to previous battles and the tension that we felt between like Luffy versus Lucci and the kind of dialogue we had there. Luffy versus Doflamingo and the kind of intensity and dialogue we had there. Luffy versus Crocodile in their final round in the, you know, in the crypts or tomes or whatever. You know, you guys get what I'm saying. So for me, if this is kind of the vibe that Luffy versus Kaido is sticking with, and this is the final fight, I personally don't like that. But to me, it also just seems like Luffy's going to lose here. So, you know, I like it if that's the direction it's going. Now, besides that, I guess the one other thing I'll talk about is the Usopp scene. I hope Usopp gets something more. Again, if this is the final set of fight, like the actual ending of the arc, I hope Usopp gets a little something more because, yeah, I mean, I think this was more of an Izzo moment than an Usopp moment, but Usopp did provide some, you know, inspirational mentality, inspirational philosophy to these samurai who are so hell-bent on dying. Usopp provides his own point of view, which is like, look, I really try to survive, like, all the time. And I think that that's hilarious that it takes a character like Usopp to kind of, you know, this is a point where it's not necessarily his cowardice is something that the samurai should try and, you know, incorporate into their own philosophy, but rather just, you know, self-preservation and, you know, value for your own life, as Usopp tends to really highly have, right? He will avoid anything that, he doesn't try to throw his life away for no reason. He's obviously very happy to risk his life and put himself, like, on the line, etc., when something is really important, when it really matters. But beyond that, the other 95% of the time, Usopp is very happy in, you know, preserving the value of his life and making sure that he's not just throwing it away frivolously. So I like that it takes a character like Usopp to basically explain to Kinemon and Kiku that, look, you guys, you need to be a little bit more like me in this scenario, this seppuku-obsessed mentality. It's not always right. Sometimes it's just stupid. You guys, let's not try to die here for no reason. Come on back with me. So I actually did like that. I like that use of Usopp's character and his mentality here, right? In terms of a moment for his character that kind of shows off his abilities and his competency, I would still like to see something more. So, that's all for this video, and if you enjoyed, then definitely like, comment, and subscribe.